to welcome you to today's Coffee and Conversation event focused on building a legacy. And we're lucky to have Peter with us today, who is the founder of the Morgan Franklin Fellowship Foundation. Before we dive into our conversation, I just want to kind of introduce Peter, and I also want to speak a little bit to MFF. Here at MFF, we provide a variety of tools, resources, education around financial literacy. Our flagship program is the Standards of Financial Literacy course, which is our entry point into MFF. Once you complete the Standards of Financial Literacy course, you become a fellow of the Morgan Franklin Fellowship Foundation. And that's where the experience and opportunity really opens up for you to dive in and take advantage of the program and the resources available to you. So we have today Peter Morgan, who is the founder of MFF. Just a little bit about him before we dive in. Peter's kind of like a saver and investor at heart. He graduated from the Naval Academy and the Tuck School at Dartmouth, where he got his MBA. He fell in love with real estate early on. He learned the ups and downs of business and entrepreneurship and learned a lot through that process. Kind of fast forward a little bit. Today, Peter runs his company, Morgan Legacy Partners, with real estate assets that range from housing to industrial to commercial across geographies from Maine to Florida. He is an active investor in people, ideas, and businesses. He's an advisor to many individuals and businesses. He's a teacher to everyone that happens to cross paths with him, which is something that you will learn more about as we continue on in our conversation. And again, we're here to talk about building a legacy, and Peter's legacy is MFF and teaching people financial literacy and how to make money work for them. He's taken the long view with this and founded the Morgan Franklin Fellowship, or I should say, kind of more formally formalized the organization back in 2014. So without further ado, I want to introduce the man, the myth, the legend that is Peter Morgan and the founder of MFF. So Peter, thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to kind of talk about this. And I know you're very busy, so thank you again, and let's dive in. First question I have for you is, can you tell us about how this began? You know, MFF kind of started with your children, expanded to children of friends and family, then as a nonprofit organization impacting people outside of your personal network.
Let me take you way, way back. Okay, you know, I'm when I was at my full height, and that was a couple of years ago. I was 6'2", and you know, I wrestled at 177 at the Naval Academy. I'm a little heavier than that now. I couldn't make weight, but way, way back, my first job was as a caddy at a golf course, and the Rockaway River Country Club in Denville, New Jersey. And you know, I believe honestly that I was 9 or 10. You know, and so you could go over and you could carry a single bag, and the going rate for someone who caddied 18 holes carrying a single bag was $2.50. So, and this is the early 1950, 1951 kind of period. But it was a country club. And so there was this sense, yeah, it wasn't real. I didn't really you interacted with members because they were the golfers, but you would also see that they had a swimming pool and their children would be part and parcel to this. And I got this sort of subtle sense that those children looked down on people who had to work like caddies, or even younger people like myself who were caddies in the caddy shack. And so somehow that ignited a fire in me that I wanted to prove that I was worthy or something. And so that's always kind of been there in the background. And so through our conversation today, we'll probably follow my projection of how I grew up and what things happened later and triggered things. But I was always driven, okay, I didn't know what I was driven to do, but I was driven to prove something. And I think that started, kindled the drive to get to the Naval Academy, the drive later to accumulate wealth, save money, learn how to invest money. And then once I stumbled into real estate, wow, I knew I'd found something that really, really intrigued me with how to thread that together. So this has been part of my fabric probably since age 10. And in the 1990s, well, let me take you back. In the 80s, as I was, getting my businesses going in Manchester, I was doing really well, and my net worth was increasing by about $1 million a year. And then as we got into 1990, and then the crisis of my net worth was probably somewhere around $5 million, and it was made up of $20 million of assets, real estate that we owned, including the Highlander, and about $15 million worth of debt. And then all of a sudden, 1991, and the great, savings and loan crisis that impacted New Hampshire came, and they were selling assets at 15 and 20 cents on the dollar. So my $20 million of assets were probably, if you had to liquidate them in a hurry, were worth $3 million. And I owed 15 million. So instead of a net worth of $5 million, I was now in a $12 million hole. And so that was such a trying period for me in the 90s, digging my way out of that hole. So at the end of 1997, August of 1997, we were finally able to buy out the note on the Highlander Inn and control that asset really by having complete ownership control as a family venture. And it occurred to me that I would end up, yes, accumulating wealth once again. And at some point, my children would be beneficiaries of this. And they had graduated from college, but didn't have much of a clue about, what money was, how it worked, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was the impetus in the late 1990s with my children to start the precursor to what eventually evolves to become Morgan Franklin Fellowship. So I'm intrigued by this. I want my children to learn about this. And so we set up an arrangement not dissimilar than what we did in 2014, where I'm providing some money and looking for some sort of feedback. Are you learning something, and are you using this money appropriately? And with my children, they were only obligated to give me an annual report. So just tell me how it's going. What are you learning? What's going on? And I only have two children. They both faltered on submitting the reports. Now this was complicated because we would host Christmas time at the end of the year when these reports were due at places like Hawaii. And Dad, you don't want me to give up this vacation time and make a silly report thing, do you? And so that's kind of how so they could play the dad card. So when Michelle and I in 2014 began what follows on and becomes Morgan Franklin Fellowship, I wanted to make sure that none of the players could play the dad card, because my children had learned some of these lessons and were on their own already. So that's quickly how I came to be motivated to make money myself. And now that I've done that, how to share the methodologies and so forth. Hope I covered that a little bit.
You did. You gave us a lot of context there. And I think that one of the really important pieces that you highlighted was building in some level of accountability for people. They can't pull the dad card. And that's been something that's been a common thread for us since that 2014 forming of the organization. Now, a person that's been really impactful on your idea of building a legacy was Benjamin Franklin. Can you speak more to what was it about Benjamin Franklin that resonated so much with you and led to kind of the way that he approached his legacy, and how you built yours kind of in a similar way, or thinking about it in a similar way?
Yeah, very much so. Somewhere in the mid 90s, another biography came out about Benjamin Franklin. Of course, most every American has some knowledge of Ben Franklin, and he's just an amazing American story. Starts from very modest beginnings and becomes self-made and a multi-millionaire by the time he passes. But one thing from this biography that I'd never heard before was the thing called the codicil to his will. And so in 1790, Ben, realizing he's getting near the end, we finished all the things about getting the United States started in 1789. And he realizes that he's owed some monies from services that he'd rendered. And he adds a codicil to his will about where this money should go. And he directs it to go to the city of Philadelphia and the city of Boston. And he wants this money to be essentially loaned out to people who have finished their apprenticeships, because his sense was that people would need capital to start. They were prepared and ready to start their business, but they would need capital in order to do it. And so his premise was, I would like you as trustees of these monies to select the candidates, make sure that they're qualified, and then lend them the money at 5% interest on a 10-year note that you would have it completely amortized in 10 years to help them get their businesses started. And, this is way, way before calculators or anything else, but Ben actually goes to do the longhand math and says, and if you guys have done your job right in 100 years, okay, you should have taken this money and it should have amassed to X number of pounds. I want you to give 30% to the respective cities of Boston and Philadelphia and keep it going for another 100 years. At the end of 200 years, my hands are really getting tired reaching from the grave to control this. And I want you just to give the balance of the money at that point to the respective cities. And that's what happened. And said, wow, what a vision that guy had. Could we parallel something like that and let that get incorporated in our vision of taking this Morgan Franklin Fellowship idea of teaching people about money and financial literacy and how money works and creating long-term net worth and financial independence? And could we create a 200-year vehicle to do that? And so that's a big part of the impetus. And that's one of the reasons why it's Morgan Franklin Fellowship, because I was inspired by the codicil to Franklin's will.
Awesome. Thanks, Peter. Definitely. What's interesting is, you say that Ben Franklin was a really big impact on you in forming this legacy, but you are an active investor and you take the long view on most all of your investments. They're not going to turn over tomorrow. And you just applied that to your legacy and kind of the way that you continue to teach. So it's pretty cool how it's baked in so many ways, taking that long-term view and investing. So one of the things that comes up often and is really important to you and all of us is that you kind of bake in experience and opportunity. It's not just like, read this book. There's a lot of hands-on to it. So could you speak to how you decided and how you've incorporated experience, hands-on experience and opportunity into MFF, and why that is such a critical part of the learning experience?
Well, I really believe that when you get engaged, if you're just intellectually engaged, reading something and trying to absorb it, how much of that lesson really sticks with you, as opposed to get really involved in the project, become a core member of a team of people that are trying to shape something, and then have maybe within your own group some specific responsibilities for one part of the project or another. Well, I think the learning aspect for what you do is dramatically enhanced, and you also begin to have an appreciation for what the other members of your group may be also contributing to get this thing to work. And so much of what my experience has been is that it's not one person that somebody may have an idea, but in order to implement that idea, you need a whole bunch of people to actually carry it out, and then make the argument to raise the monies, and then you're going to run into obstacles, and you're going to need certain skills to get past certain obstacles. And so it's a collective team effort generally. And I think those practical either internships or learning lessons really reinforce what we're hoping to inculcate in people as they get these lessons. Oh, okay. And so the whole idea of teaching and learning is, once you've learned it, it's yours. No one can take that away from you. And so get engaged. And that's one of the reasons, the philosophical aspect of Morgan. Look, we're not going to coddle you. Oh, yes, your mom wanted you to do this. That's wonderful. But if you don't want to get in and do the work, drop out. Come back when you're ready. But we want you engaged. We want you mentally and physically. I want you to really be thinking about what we're doing here. Okay. because that's the only way it's really going to resonate and impact you on the long pull. And so the dynamic is trying to find ways, because people learn things in different ways also. And so what's the best way for you to learn? Okay, some people, it's very physical. Some people, it's, for me, I'm really good if somebody presents things to me, I can absorb, connect the dots, boom. So in classroom presentation, that's my best, okay? Because, and in school, because I was good at that, generally, if even if I didn't read anything outside of class, I was such a good absorber and note taker that, I would absorb and understand 80 to 90% of what was presented, and that's what they would test on, and you'd do just fine. And in the context of what we're trying to teach, we want you to learn. So what's the best way for you to learn? Some people, it's very kinesthetic. I really want to, get my body involved or whatever. Some people can just read it and they get it. Whatever that method is, that's fine. And we're trying to incorporate within Morgan Franklin the methodology of presenting materials. Some of it's video, some of it's quick questions, some of it's with humor, some of it's with a story. And each of those methodologies will resonate with certain people. And so we want to help have a whole menu of ways that we're presenting this material. Absorb it as best you can, apply it, play it back. Did you get it right? I was talking to someone yesterday about, the way we go through our online course. Okay, we present a quiz. Okay, take the quiz. Oh, you didn't pass it. Take the quiz again. We don't care. We want you to learn the material. The idea is not, oh, I got 100 the first time. Well, that's nice. We just want to make sure that everybody understands the material as you go through it. And so developing other methodologies and ways that these things resonate, also trying to share it within a group, because somebody else will hear ABC and it'll hit and it'll trigger a question, and they ask a question. It's sort of like the brainstorming effect of a group, and they ask this question in earnest, and so somebody else, that takes you and it embellishes the message. And so with somebody else, had that question not been part of the process, it may not have resonated with this other individual. So try to create a format to enhance the learning capability, the takeaway learning aspect for each member who's in class.
Yeah, it's funny. You do it in a variety of different ways. And sometimes I think you just ask me like, hey, do you want to check this out? Just to see my jaw drop to the floor so you can have a chuckle at like
You noticed that, Mike? Oh my goodness.
I think that sometimes you and Joan get a good laugh out of it. But it's really important to dive into those experiences. And even if you're reluctant or not sure what it is exactly, once you dive into it, what you take away in terms of learning and experience is magnified greatly. So it's very important. Now, there's another.
And so much of what we're all about is you didn't do it before. This isn't brand new. Okay, so the first time first time you learned how to walk, how often did you fall down? Often, right? Hopefully you must have gotten back up and tried again because you walked. Okay, and same thing here. How will you learn it? Oh, try it. Okay. Oh, I didn't succeed. I didn't get all the way across the room this first time. That's the issue. The issue is get you back up, try it again. What did I learn from that experience? Okay. And so we learn, take smaller steps, or whatever, lean on. If it's iffy, it's really funny. Joan's great granddaughter, Ellie, has been around. You've heard some of the stories of how mesmerized and smitten I've become with Ellie. But it's just so fun to watch her learning. Okay. And then remembering. Okay, so on our deck we have a lanai, and there's a step to get out there, and it's got a slider. Okay, so it's not like it's level, and it says hold on and put your foot down, and she's learned how to navigate and get out on the lanai. And good on you. It's just so fun to watch. And that's the same. Look, that's how we all learn. Particularly stuff that we've never done before. I've never done this. I know you've never done it, but I want you to try it. Okay, because you'll learn something because you don't know anything about it now. You'll know more tomorrow. But I didn't get it right. That's not the point. The point is, do you know more tomorrow? What did I learn? Okay. I tried that. That didn't work so well. Okay, let's try something different because the objective is still there. We need to advance the ball here, and so that learning process. It's this whole there's a mystique about schools and perfection and A's and somebody gets A and A plus. That's not the way life works. Life doesn't grade things, not the life that I live anyway. And so you get it done. So much of business is just get it done and learn from it. Hopefully we do a better job the next time. And so many of the best students, oh, if I could just do my paper one more time, or do a little more editing. I know there's some bigger words I could have used. Come on, bang. We got business to do.
Right. I like the LA example because it connects well to the environment that we provide, and specifically some of the opportunities that I've had the opportunity to work with you on, where it's an environment where, yeah, you're going to get some bumps and bruises along the way, but you also have the support of people and resources so that you're not going to like fall off of the lanai. We'll put it that way. So, with that said, it's super important, and you've conveyed that very, very well. There's another really important story that comes up a lot related to MFF, which is the one starfish at a time. Can you share with us why MFF is modeled after saving one starfish at a time, and why is that story so meaningful to you?
Yeah, I think it's so much of this stuff is individual. Where are you? Okay, and is there one box everybody fits in the same box? And that's not the case. And we live in a society where we have a lot of personal choices and freedoms. And so where are you? Where are you going? And if I've sat with you for 10 minutes, probably some way I'll ask that question. Where are you going? Okay, where do you plan to be 5 years from now? What's that all about? Well, have you thought that through? Because 5 years go by pretty quickly, and sometimes people are stuck. They just and my sense is that moving is if you're moving towards something, you're making progress. Okay, you're learning, you're picking this stuff up, and you can redirect. If you're still sitting, you're not. There's no progress there at all. And so the dynamic of trying to encourage people to move, and so one at a time as opposed to groups. Sometimes you can address things as groups, but most of this is so personal. What's your budget? What much money are you making? What is your personal net worth? I don't care what the number is. What I want to know is that you know the number. And why do I think that's important? Because in America, we're such a consumer-driven society, and 70% of our gross domestic product is related to consumer spending. Okay, and so encouraging people to swim against that tide, because there's a new car, there's a new phone, there's a new water bottle, there are new sneakers. The old sneakers weren't bad, but you got to have the new sneakers now because, okay, so we're encouraging people to swim against the tide. Well, I think that one-on-one aspect of, hey, I'm here to help you. Where are you? Where are you trying to go? Okay, how are we going to measure your progress? Boom, boom, boom. And you have to do it. Okay, we're not doing that for you. You have to be the person who's making that happen. And we'll follow your progress and critique it and help you get mentors or other support. but the dynamic of it is it's onesies, and boom, 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 and and as you learn these things, hopefully the other aspect of what's part and parcel to the fabric of Morgan Franklin is I want to share this with the next guy. This is where I was a year ago, and now I've learned these things and I've made this progress. I want to share that with someone else. And so that dynamic is one-on-one. You reach out to somebody else who, where are you? Where are you trying to go? This is how someone helped me from Morgan Franklin get from A to B, and now I'm going to C. And where are you? Where are you trying to go? I may be able to help shine a light to help you get on that path. And so I think a lot of it is just individual, and as opposed to some blanket plan.
The level of impact for that individual is so high versus taking a broad brush stroke and, having a little impact on a lot of people. You can really have a significant impact on that, that one starfish that you're throwing back into the tide. So,
and it's so satisfying. I mean, and often so appreciate. Sometimes you help people and they don't. It's, oh yeah, you're supposed to do that. That's where you get some sort of But the reality is, some people really. Whoa, particularly if you've had that conversation. Where are you today? Where are you going? What's your plan to get there? Okay, and so you invest some time and energy with that individual. Okay, and so a year later, 6 months later, as they're making their progress, that sense of, wow, you're right. And that's one of the other things I think in, maybe somewhat peculiar to me, but having an ability to keep things in perspective and view things differently than many others. And so, so the lens or the seat that I'm at the table often bears a certain perspective of what the topic is. What are we talking about here, and how does this relate? And so I think offering that sense of perspective, wow, look at the progress. Remember when we had this conversation 6 months ago and you were here and we were trying to map and see, could you get to here? And look, you've blown right by that. What's next? Think about, because we're really trying the methodology. How do you set some goals and get some achievement? Baby steps. It's okay. We're moving. Okay. And as you get substance behind you, then you have more options. And that's my favorite aspect of it, is that you're moving and you had a direction and you had a goal and you're getting closer to that or not. I've changed my mind. I don't think I want to be a doctor anymore. I think I want to be this. Okay. Well, if you're moving through the coursework at a college or whatever, it's so much easier than if you were just sitting somewhere. Okay. And I read about, no, come on. And boom, boom, boom. Got to be moving.
Awesome. So one of the things that you speak a lot of, or it's like your favorite word, or one of your favorite words, is serendipity. Often people equate serendipity with luck, but that's not necessarily how you see it. Can you speak more to how you view serendipity? What does it mean to you, and why is it important?
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the other misunderstood aspect is actually how your brain has several compartments, the active things that you're thinking about, and then your subconscious. And one of the early books that I was exposed to was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And he talks a lot about your subconscious brain. So what's this? And that your subconscious is very, very loyal. If you give it an assignment, what was that girl's name? I know I met that girl, okay? And they go back through the records and it's, thing, and then 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, as you get older, maybe it's an hour later, all of a sudden that name comes back to your head. Oh, it was Marianne. Oh, that's right. That's what that was. Okay. So how does that work? Okay. And so here in Think and Grow Rich, he begins to talk about how you can prime your subconscious with questions. Okay. And so the dynamic of trying to solve this challenge. Okay. And so I ask my subconscious, I'd like you to work on this. Okay. And so, and your subconscious is very loyal. Okay, I'm going to get on that. Okay. And so that answer will come to you when he comes up with the answer, internally. And so serendipity to me is priming the pump. What am I looking for? Okay. And so I get the subconscious looking, and on a broader basis, I'm not particularly religious, but I do believe I'm spiritual in the context. I think there's someone up there, a God of some sort, that has a plan, and each of us is charged. What is your contribution? You're supposed to figure this out. What's your purpose? How does this all fit? And then the dynamic of how some of these things come together is by using your subconscious. What is it that I'm missing? Serendipity to me is I bumped into you. I've seen your name 2 times in the last week. Something out there is putting us together. I think there's a reason that we met. I think part of our charge is, can we discover what that reason is? The system has put us together, I think, for a reason. Maybe not, but let's at least explore that. And that to me is the aspect of serendipity. We didn't do this by our own design, but I think in a broader context, we've been thrust together. And so these answers come up to things that you're looking for, or people that you meet. And to me, that's the fun of it. And then suddenly, when you get into those, conversations, it's not about the weather or, what you did on Tuesday for breakfast. You really often you get into much, much deeper conversations about where are you going? How could I help you? How could you help me? We're trying to explore this together. I think there's a reason that we met. How could I help you? How could you help me? That type of thing. And so those dynamics to me are all captured in the aspect of serendipity. You prime the pump, get your subconscious going, and then these answers or these people or other things happen, and there's a reason. And part of your charge is figure out the reason, because it'll take you to a different place.
It's a great word, something that, I hear it a lot, but I also think about it a lot, that, luck doesn't just happen. It's active thought, preparing and being ready for it. And then when it surfaces, you can jump on it. So it's become a favorite word of mine, by osmosis. So, with that said, you've seen firsthand how MFF has positively impacted people. Can you tell us about how you've watched people grow personally and professionally due to their involvement with the Morgan Franklin Fellowship and with you? And I know that I've changed quite a bit in the last 18 months, but if you could speak to some of the other people that you've worked with and watched how they've changed and grown. I can think of a few recent ones that come to mind, but I'd love to hear some from you.
Well, some of the early pioneers that, when Michelle and I started this back in 2014, it was all friends and family, people that couldn't play the dad card, but, they were part of it. And so I think there's some magic that sort of happens, if parents are so passionate about making sure that, their children have as much advantage as possible. And so we've come up with this Morgan Franklin Fellowship. Okay. And so here's the dynamic. And if I can help you, John McKinnon, with something, great. But if I can help your child, and he has 2 children, learn some aspects of how the money works and how projects work and how to get a return on investment and think about things in a somewhat different context. Oh, wow. And John knows that his children will really benefit if they could grasp some of this. And we also realize as parents that often once those teenage years get there, it's against the rules. You don't talk to your parents, and don't listen to what they're telling you, because I don't know what it is but we're supposed to learn this stuff on our own. And, and there's so many things that a 13 or 14-year-old doesn't know anything about. But the dynamic is, we certainly don't want to talk to our parents about it. So having some other vehicle, Morgan Franklin Fellowship, as part and parcel to this, it's not your parent, it's somebody else, and this methodology to try to help people. So John has grown a lot. His children, Morgan's project down there this last year of finding this house on 2.3 acres that had not been lived in 15 years. I mean, the vegetation had grown over the windows. When you were inside this house, it was so worn out, you couldn't see out the windows. And the transformation over 4 to 6 months of just cleaning that up and reimagining what the house could be and having the money and putting a new roof on and a new porch, et cetera, et cetera. And now the house is rented. And so that Morgan got to experience all of that stuff. I mean, so back to, what did she learn? Well, what has she absorbed about so many things as part and parcel to this process? And and so where will Morgan be 5 or 10 years from now? We don't know, but she's got this tool in her quiver now of, I've experienced this, okay? And I took this thing that was just laying there and we transformed that, and it's now rented. It's a viable house. And by the way, we also are able to get 12 additional pads where we could put mobile homes on the same 2.3 acres. So we took this asset that we purchased for $38,000 and have created value approaching $500,000 by the time this all gets settled. Now we've invested additional monies, but our total investment, probably $200,000 to create $450,000 or $500,000 worth of value in a 12-month period. And Morgan was a key part of that team and that project. So, what's the takeaway? I don't know, except I do know that she will be a very different person from having gone through that experience. So that type of opportunity, we're creating that, and we're doing it and engaging starfish one at a time or as part of a group. Do you want to take this and create this kind of value? And so in a similar fashion, Joan's granddaughter down in Florida, Ellie's mom, they were over on the East Coast of Florida. Her significant other is a licensed contractor in flooring and tile work. Do you want to come over and be close to the family and take a look at where we are on the West Coast? Okay. Yes. So they came over. Yeah, close to the family would be nice, et cetera, et cetera. Great. So that was the start. And so then the other ideas, maybe you're going to need a place to live. And Corey is very mechanical, as opposed to Peter, who's not very mechanical at all. Okay. So the dynamic, if we could buy something that's a little bit distressed and needs some assistance and would do some fix up. And that's the genesis of Venice Asset Group. So we organized that LLC. We put some capital together. We get a property under contract. We buy a home. We renovate. We put the money together. We renovate it. And now they're paying rent, living in a home that they own 20% of. Well, how has their life changed in 12 months? They were over around, boom, boom, boom. It's pretty dramatic. Starfish, they're one at a time, and are they learning and growing and learning about? Martha's learning how to be the treasurer and the secretary for a corporation. See her sit up when we have one of our corporate meetings. I'm a corporate executive, not a high school graduate, but I'm a corporate executive, and I can put together a balance sheet. And on this next Sunday, we're going to have our next meeting, and she's going to work with Michelle, and then she's going to present the balance sheet and a pro forma on where we're going to go this next 12 months, and boop, 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 boop. Changed? Wow, yeah. And it's hers, and it's part of the fabric of Martha Lusk. You're not going to ever get that away from her. And, so we were part of that process. Wow, isn't that nifty? And it'll touch other people, so I don't know. I got carried away. Sorry.
No, that's what I wanted. That's why I kind of threw some gas on the fire there. So exactly what I was hoping. There's so many more stories that we could share and you could touch on, but really the reality is those individuals, taking the time to invest in them, learn about them, and then provide them with opportunities to really grow and develop is something that we do, one starfish at a time. So there's a big difference between having money and making money. That's something that a lot of people struggle to understand. Can you talk about the difference and importance between the two of those?
I'll be glad to. Yes. Be careful how many stories you want now, Mike. Anyway, one of my favorite personal stories is 1966. Carol and I were married about a year. We had just finished at submarine school and we're headed to the West Coast. I was going to join a submarine out in San Diego, and then the submarine was going to go into overhaul up in San Francisco in the fall. And so we had some reserve officers who were serving on the submarine, just getting some reserve time. And one of them suggested to one of the officers on board and myself that there was a course up in San Francisco that he had taken called the McAvoy Sales Institute, and it talked about selling techniques and things that he found them very valuable. He seemed pretty grounded. So John Craggs and I both decided that we would do this when we got to San Francisco. And so the course cost $200. This is 1966. So $200 is not a minor sum. I'm not sure what would be the equivalent today, but it would obviously be a lot more than $200. So we signed up for this. And so the session started at 7:07, and there's 10 sessions. And most of it's about selling techniques and listening to your customer and trying to figure that stuff out. John and I are naval officers. I mean, we have things that got to get done. We have some pretty direct application about, okay, John or George or whatever, we're going to do this. Okay. We don't have a whole lot of selling technique ideas that we can apply. But in session 5, the assignment for session 10 is, what are your goals for life? So 1966, I'm 23, married about a year. Carol and I were good savers. My dad had been a security analyst. So I had a sense for saving money and having money, and that you could invest money and maybe get a 10% return. So I take this assignment and I map out, Ben Franklin and I had things in common. We had to do this longhand. So bing, 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 we'd save so much money, we'd get a return on it, boom, 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 year by year by year by year. Carolyn, we're going to be rich. I've done the math. If we do that, we follow this plan, make this much money, get this kind of return, we will have a net worth when we're 65 of $150,000. I have a goal. I've always had a goal that I wanted to be worthy of something. This is concrete, finite. Here's the answer. Here's the plan. We stay on this plan. We get there. Wow. So, Peter Morgan, 23. Anything change? You could make the argument nothing had changed. I was going to go back and do the same thing I was going to do at the submarine yesterday. But something had changed. Peter had a vision of where his future was. He had a plan for how to go about and make that happen. His self-image was, I will be a wealthy person, and the goal has always been there. Now I exactly know how it will be achieved, and I can be measuring my progress. And I was a changed person. It was dramatically different. And so I attribute a lot of my long-term success from having had that opportunity of being in that course. And where am I? Where am I going? Having a plan, a realistic plan about how to get there. Whoa, you absorb that, you change your own self-image of who you are and what you're all about, and you're just different. So that's the experience that worked for me. Can I share that in one fashion or another with you? Where are you? Where are you going? Okay, and can we advance the ball for you on a path that takes you where you want to go? And so I think that that's part of my charge in life, helping shine a light on different paths that people might choose to go from where they are to where they want to go, and guide them in some fashion along the way. Is that anywhere close to what you asked?
If we had more time, I'd press you a little bit more, but I have one more question, and then we have a couple of people that have asked some things that I'd like to maybe hit on. So the
Okay.
last I'll throw your way is, in creating this legacy, you are taking what many would consider a long view. There is a financial component to this, but I think we would love to hear more about kind of how you invest in people, encourage them to invest in others, and the ripple effect that has over time. And you even talked about that a little bit without intending to earlier for another question, which was your example of Martha, and the impact that investing in her and giving her opportunity to do things. Where you spoke to, you have Michelle, who's worked with you for a long time and has learned a lot from you, is now investing her time, knowledge, and resources into another person. So you invest in people, you teach, but you also kind of, I don't know that you do it on purpose, but the way that you carry yourself encourages others to kind of continue that on and carry it forward and invest and teach and help others. Can you maybe speak to your legacy, that long view, and that ripple effect that you're creating with the people that you give your time to and support?
Sure. The pay it forward sort of mindset, and I'm probably in the last decade or 15 years maybe of my life. Okay. And so you get to this point and say, oh, what else is left? What's important? And I've accumulated some financial resources and some skills. And can you help other people? Can you help them find the path or a better path? And work with them to measure their progress as they're doing that. And it's just enormously satisfying because they end up, just financially stronger or emotionally or otherwise. And so the dynamic, we all need other people, to help us. I mean, people have certainly helped me along the way too, and, had some level of confidence that I could do things. Often things that you hadn't done before. Okay, so I think you'll be able to, try it, push. And so in that same vein, trying to find what I characterize as jockeys, looking for people who have skill sets, and sometimes I'm looking for people that I would characterize like me in the early 1990s that are good folks, working. Suddenly the SNL crisis or some other crisis comes across, the pandemic, comes across, you weren't expecting it, and suddenly your canoe is flooded. Okay. How could I help this person? Okay. And, is it my responsibility? Yeah, not really, but yeah, could I see a way to help people who are in a canoe that's flooded? Okay. Help them bail it out or show them a better direction or, move along. And it's just enormously satisfying. And sometimes it doesn't work. Some people are not receptive, but by and large, I find that, people are open to getting advice from people who have had some success in other aspects of their life, and a willingness to share that. And is there an explicit, okay, I help you, and the understanding is that you help the next guy? No, it's I think that's part and parcel to this. That's sort of an implicit contract that we don't just keep it ourselves, but we share it. And hopefully the dynamic is that people, yeah, that feels good. Oh, I helped. Being helpful is, it's you get some good things to happen, and everybody wins. I mean, isn't that fun when everybody can win?
It is.
Answer some of your question.
It is. It is. I think that people also get a lot out of seeing how excited and how much pride you take in being a part of that person's success, and that they want to be a part of that as well and carry it forward. So thank you for all that you do. I've harassed you with all of my questions, and as always, I have millions more, but I'm going to take some of the questions that people have dropped in the chat before we conclude, and we'll kind of go from there. So one of the first ones that we got was from Kerry Gladstone. He mentioned the starfish story tells me we can make a difference in the life of one, if not everyone. How does that relate to your vision of where you'd like to see MFF go?
Well, I think we do it one at a time, by and large, but because one, okay, so we help one person and suddenly they're in a better platform. Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, they were at a 2 and now they're at a 6, just because they're on a better grounded basis, financially, emotionally, or some other way. And if inculcated this idea that, I want to help someone else, this thing will be exponential because that person will touch 2 or 3 other people. And, so everybody's touching 2 or 3 other, how big could this get? It could get quite large, and we would impact and touch a lot of people. But it's thorough, and it's highly focused on the needs of this one individual at a time to get them to where they need to go next. And it shouldn't absorb all of your energy and effort. Sometimes it might. So Martha just had her second child in January, and that has given rise for us, Joan and I, to have sleepovers with Ellie, and have sleepover. Okay, it's been a long time since we've had an infant or a 15-month-old baby in the house. Okay, how long do they sleep? And what do you do when they wake up? And that sense of responsibility, it was like, whoa. And so this child is sleeping and tiptoeing in. You remember the rules, don't wake them, okay? But you tiptoe in and you look, and they're sleeping one way, and then you go back a couple of hours later and they've moved around, so they're still alive. And you say, wow, because you've taken on this responsibility. And then with this new baby that was born in January, God, they start out and they're so tiny and virtually so helpless, right? I mean, they need everything, okay? And then you see a 15-month-old, my other grandchildren are, 16 down to 8, and the dynamic of how they're growing and changing. Whoa, just kind of interesting how we grow and change, and how we need each other. We humans are social animals, and we take care of each other one way or another. Hopefully that's the better side of the better angels of our nature or whatever. There are certainly, each of us also have things that we're not so happy about or proud of, but part of the challenge of our conscience and everything else is keep those things in check. And so how can we expand and grow the platform? One at a time, but that one touches someone else. And so I think it's exponential if it's working the way, and particularly having developed the online program to get it started, and reaching out and touching, so I think it has explosive potential on an individual basis and on a group basis. And we'll see. We're still pretty early in the game.
Awesome. So there was a follow-on question to that I missed, Carrie, so I apologize for that. It was, does it allow for standards of financial literacy for all? And I'm just gonna kind of touch on that. It might be a little confusing, but that's kind of like, that's our flagship program, but that's our pre-qualifier. So it gives them the baseline knowledge to be able to participate in these experiential learning opportunities and further online programming as well. So that is open to anybody and everybody. So if you know people or you yourself want to do it just to check it out, that's open to everybody. But you have to complete that in order to become a fellow. That opens you up to many, many other opportunities. It's like the pre-qualifier. So we don't just like some of these people that Peter's mentioned that have these experiential learning opportunities. They do have to prove that they're going to go through the program and give us some idea that they are disciplined and interested enough to pursue something. with vigor. So that is open to everybody, but it is our pre-qualifier. I want to thank you again for your time and for being so candid with us.
Great. No, it's been fun. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you for joining us for our virtual event focused on how to build a legacy with Peter Morgan, who is a board member and the founder of Morgan Franklin Fellowship. Peter is also the founder and CEO of Morgan Legacy Partners, which is a real estate investment firm with assets ranging from commercial to industrial to housing in geographies from Maine to Florida. We hope you enjoyed the program and about learning more about what the Morgan Franklin Fellowship is and how we make an impact. You can learn more about our courses, our resources, and more at morganfranklinfellowship.com.